welcome to Gold Scratch. So everybody loves Holley carburetors. They're beautiful. They're pretty simple. They're easy to work on and adjust. Unlike its ugly cousin, the Quadrajet, that nobody understands. Pretty common for people to take the Quardrajet off, throw it away, and put on a Holley. Stick with us today. I'm going to have Bill Little with me here. We're at Belmont Automotive to explain why you shouldn't do that. It's a good carburetor. We've done tests on the dyno where actually Quadrajet's outworked the Holley carburetor. So let me turn it over to Bill. And just one quick other thing. That's how crazy it is. Holley actually made a carburetor to replace the Quardrajet so you could bolt it on your Quardrajet manifold. That's how crazy this gets. So you didn't have to do that. The Quardrajet would have been fine, right, Bill?
And you know something? The Holley would never pass E-test.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
The Quadrajets would pass E-test. The Holley.
There's lots of versions of those tied in.
Yeah, and that they have a rich idle circuit, and they would work on something with a camshaft, but they would not pass E-test. So that's, you know, the Quadrajet was far better metering on the primaries.
So I'm going to back out of the way, Bill, and you can explain how a Quardrajet works and why it works just as good as a Holley. And we got a few. Stick with us. We got a few points to make that you should think about before you make that change. So take it away, Bill.
All right, guys. I'm going to take this Quadrajet apart in a minute. So here we have a Quadrajet from the late 70s probably, maybe early 80s. Probably came off a truck, my guess would be. It has no kick down here, so it probably came off a manual transmission. If it had the kick down piece on it, it would be an automatic. So get this back on the stand. Oops, and I just broke it, of course. Let me get this here. I broke two of them. My buddy Steve won't be happy with me because he just made that on a CNC printer. So we have a typical Quadrajet, fuel inlet, throttle, choke blade. There's a pull off that goes on the side of here that actually looks like this, and it goes up to the air valve, and it also works with the choke mechanism to open the choke a little bit during warm up. But we'll get to that a little bit later. That's for another video, actually, how to set up the choke properly on a Quadrajet. But for today, I'm just going to show you some of the operations. So for the secondaries, we have a hanger here, and we have some metering rods which aren't in there right now. We'll just find a set here. So the metering rods hang on the hanger like this. All right, they drop down into a jet. Now what does that jet look like? I have a cutaway view here. So I'm actually going to put this into here, and I'm going to show you how this works with this cutaway view. Let me get this in here first. Okay, get the screw back in here. It doesn't go anywhere. These hangers actually come in all different heights. They raise their metering rods up or down depending on what the fuel curve, how rich you want it. So basically, if you look at this, there's the metering rods. They're sitting down in the jet here. As the air valve opens, that pulls the rods out of the jet, and you can see how the hole opens down in there. It goes into the small part of the rod. Okay, that's wide open throttle. When it closes the jet up. Open it up, and as you can see, the taper that's on there actually goes with the amount of airflow as the air door is opening. So as the air door opens, more air goes in, the taper gets smaller until wide open throttle, and then you're working on the very tip of the metering rod. Okay, which is a little bit hard to see maybe. We'll see if we can get it closer, you know. And the hangers come in all different. The hanger has got a number on here. That is a N, I believe. and it goes from A to Z or Z, and the higher the number, so an A would be the highest. It's going to raise these rods up higher to start with. So that actually gets it into the power mixture sooner. And you basically want a long tip for maximum power. I don't know if I have any long tip ones here right now. But here's a real rich rod. That's a real rich one. You can see how small that tip is. And then that's a larger tip. So the small tip would richen it. The big tip leans it out. The hanger, the higher the hanger is, the richer it is. Up to about 3,600 RPM. And the bigger the tip, the lower you lower it, you delay the fuel coming into the Venturis.
So does that displace the need for a power valve as such that a Holly has, or has it got another valve in there somewhere?
No, Holly, okay, so Quadrajet, they have a secondary accelerator pump in them, believe it or not.
Okay.
An automatic secondary accelerator pump. It hasn't got an arm or anything. It's automatic. Okay. I'll show you that in a second.
Okay.
So
Okay.
the fuel's in this fuel bowl, and it goes down into the jet. Here's the passages here. Then it goes up the main well, and there are tubes that hang down on an angle that go down in here. I'll show them to you in a minute. So the fuel goes up into the tubes. As the air valve opens, it creates a venturi and it pulls fuel out the tubes. Okay, and a thing that a lot of the carburetor guys did in the past was drill these wells out bigger. That's not the thing to do. That's wrong to make that any bigger, because it will slow up the response to the secondaries. So that's how the secondary system works. But if you look now, so this one right here, you see this hole right here? You see that hole, Alex? Yep. So when the air door opens, it causes a vacuum at that hole. And that hole actually goes down into a tube. It opens up, there's a tube that goes down into this well right here, and this well is fed with a small hole, and it actually sucks the fuel out of the well into here to cover up the opening of the secondary system.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it will pull fuel. You can modify that. That's a pretty small hole right there. Usually when I do those, that hole is going to be 50 thou at least.
So that displaces the need for
an accelerator pump,
as we know it in a Holly, for example.
Yep, exactly.
So you don't need one. Okay.
Exactly. So yeah. I mean, I
that's
think
your initial shot when you first open the throttle.
Yes,
right?
and
okay.
The reason a lot of these would bog is because they didn't have enough fuel here.
Okay.
When it opened up, they probably did that for emissions, you know. But the larger the hole, now once the air valve, that hole will meter fuel, that wide open throttle, not as much as it did at this point right here. If you want to modify your Quadrajet, you can actually, around this hole, take a 3/8 die grinder and make a 3/8 half moon piece here, and same on the other side, right like centered with this hole. And what that does, it starts the fuel flowing before the air valve even opens up.
Okay. Yeah.
So it actually
helps take the bog out of it.
Has a bit of a shot ahead of time. That will take any bog you have out of it.
Okay, cool.
Now, Rochester also did some strange things back in the day. They would put, the Pontiacs had long slots here instead of a half moon piece, like I said, a long slot, which actually sort of defeated the purpose. It was too much all at once. And they also would make the air door with different configurations here, and that would actually draw the air in a different spot into the intake manifold.
So people often they take the breather off and they pull the throttle back, leaning over the engine, and they say, my back barrels don't work because they don't open. Explain how they're getting that wrong.
Well, so, say that, you're revving the engine up and you're going, wah, wah, wah. These may not even open up until over 3,600 RPM.
Right.
So
and you got a load on the engine.
you'd
too.
have to have a load on the engine. You'd have to have the engine revving. So you have a secondary throttle plate here that opens up, and as that opens up, the vacuum will pull the air door open. And there's a tension on this air door. It's adjustable, and depending on what the tension is, so the stiffer the tension, the richer the mixture will be because it takes more to open it. So you're pulling harder on the boosters. The less tension, this is going to open up fast. So if you had a race car with a high stall converter, you want this to open pretty fast.
Right.
You know, you're already up in RPM anyway, wide open on the two-step. You really don't need to worry. Even these accelerator pump holes on a two-step car with a 5,000 or 6,000 converter, they do very little. A wide open throttle, it's open pulling fuel.
But even guys with Hollies often think, oh, my back barrels, if they're vacuum secondary, right? They don't work. They're looking over leaning over the engine.
Hollies,
they're not going to open unless
Hollies are even worse because they need.
They don't have air doors. They got to open the.
They need primary airspeed in order to start to open that.
Right. So they're never going to open.
No, you would have to hold that wide open for like 10 seconds.
You blow up before.
Blow the engine up, and then you're done, right?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
don't worry about it. They're probably opening.
That's the secondary system. You have an accelerator pump arm here that is activated with the throttle. So it's basically a plunger that pushes down, and it pushes fuel into the primary boosters. There's two little holes there, and it exits fuel, and that actually will cover up the bog on the primaries. There's some other things to show you here, but I'm going to have to take it apart. That's the fuel inlet here. You be careful you don't tighten these too awful tight. They have a seal on here. The early ones had a gasket. These have a plastic seal. I can't get it off, but a plastic seal that snaps on there, and it seals in there, and guys over tighten those all the time. They'll strip the threads and then it's done. You also have a spring behind the filter, which is basically a bypass. If the filter gets plugged, it's going to open it up. Okay. Let me now, to get this off the easiest way, I struggled for years until I found out how to do this. So the easiest way that I found was to take a 90-degree pick, but that one will work right there, and you just stick it in there, you give it a little bit of a shove, you pop that out of there, out comes a pin, just like that.
Oh, okay, cool.
That way you can just take that, flip it down the side, and it makes your life a lot easier, believe me, a lot easier. All right, now we're going to take, there's two screws down inside here you can't forget to take out. They're down in the boosters. Take one. They're a tapered head. Okay, you can't mess it up. Well, some people could, but anyway, you shouldn't. And these screws are all the same size except for the ones in the boosters and these back ones here. They're longer, these are shorter. These are the long ones. The price of carburetors these days, to buy a decent 750 Holly, you're looking at over $1,000.
Yep.
And you know, that gets pretty pricey for people. You know, if you have a decent Quadrajet, you can make some modifications, and I guarantee you it'll work as good or better than the Holly. It just doesn't look as sexy, that's all.
Well, while we're watching you do it, Bill, as a reference, Bill has a Superstock 3,400 pound car with a 359 to 1 engine. It's got a Quadrajet carburetor, and it runs in the 9-second bracket, so that gives you an idea.
Run 98, 132 mile an hour with the Oldsmobile engine. It's run 969 with the small block at 135.
If you think a Quadrajet carburetor can't make power, there's a pretty good example, right?
It can.
It's still not very pretty, though.
They're not pretty at all.
No.
They're not very. So we take this off. Here's the accelerator pump. It has a rubber diaphragm on. You can see this is all white and corroded. That's usually what you'll find with a Quadrajet. They're going to have a lot of that stuff in the bottom, unless you find a real nice looking one.
The kit will have a new one though, right?
The kit has just a new rubber anyway, yes,
Yeah,
and there's two or three different variations. These are the tubes I was talking about. These tubes right here, they end up on top of this air door. As the air door opens, it pulls fuel out of here, and if you look, I'll take this off of here. This gasket's going to be pretty hard, I can tell. The trick to these gaskets is there's like a little flap here, so you have to pull this flap up like this, and then the gasket pulls out like that. There are two wells. There's a well here, and there's a well in here. Okay, and down at the bottom of the well, I don't know if you can see that way down in here on an angle, there are two little, they're about 28 thou holes. It's going to be really hard to see them, but they go down on an angle and they fill this well up. And the reason the hole's really small is that they don't want it to meter any more fuel once the shot's already gone. Okay. So if they make that hole small, they can only meter as much as what that hole. It will add richness to the jet because it will pull a bit of fuel out that accelerator pump system. For a race application, we change all that. Race application, for a trans brake, you take these tubes right out. You don't even need them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now here's the boosters the booster tubes I was telling you about. So the fuel goes up past the accelerator or past the metering rods, comes up around here, and it exits here. Okay. Now if you look, somebody has driven these tubes in right up, and you can see the end of the tube right in there. The trick is, if you want to shorten these tubes, you can drive it in, but you better take that to a grinder and make sure that you don't see any of that tube, because that restricts the flow coming out of the tube here a little bit.
Is that the standard size of those tubes?
Mm-hmm.
It is,
yep.
eh? They look big, eh?
They are, and I've made up smaller tubes,
yeah,
and smaller tubes don't work.
Yeah.
They want to be that big. So how does this work? So basically, we need a venturi for that to work. So anyway, I'm just going to show you like this, I guess. So when this is open, let me get this back down in here. This thing right here is kind of in the way, but that's okay. Come here, you. Right here. So this plate that's down in here is a plate that goes right across. It's notched for the booster tubes. When the air door is open, it actually makes a venturi.
Oh, it does, eh? Okay.
Of roughly 7 to 8 degrees.
Okay.
And depending on where the air door is, you can increase a venturi or decrease it. And that's why sometimes when you get these things open to get maximum airflow, you have to shorten the tubes, and you have to add a little more jet because the pull isn't as much as it normally would be, because you made the venturi smaller, right? So looking at this, you can see here's the adjustment for the tension on the air door. There's a screw you loosen up, there's a spring, and there's a...
So if you want it to open faster, you can adjust that.
Yep, you undo this screw, and then that undoes.
Comes out.
Undo that, okay, and then you can unwind that till the spring is free, and then just turn it till the spring right here just touches that, and then a half to 3/4 of a turn afterwards, and then that's basically a lock screw right there. So you can lock her up. We have a vent here. On a real hard launching car, you will have fuel climb up the back wall here, and it'll actually come out it's going to come out into the secondaries, and you don't want that to happen. So the trick is, you take some electrical tape, you put the tape over top of here, you cut a slit in it, and then the tubes go down in that slit. You can make like a cross slit, and then the fuel can't come out in the secondary.
It's like the whistle tube in the Holly, right?
Kind of the same
idea,
same deal, because the fuel bowl is so small in a Quadrajet, you can imagine what happens on a wheel standing car. you get that thing wheel standing like that, the fuel level is up to the very top.
Pouring right over.
And what that does, that's kind of bad because that richens up the secondaries.
Sure.
And
You'll stumble, right? For sure.
It'll stumble because it's made of fat.
You won't be on your wheels very long doing that.
No, and so the trick to that is you got to keep the float level on a wheel standing car. Keep the float level down from where they say.
Sure.
You need the float level probably. All the high performance books say 1/4 inch float level, but that doesn't work. You need to be like 7/16 of an inch.
Okay.
You have to keep that float down so that.
Keep them dumping into the back barrels.
Yeah, because another thing that happens when you do this, the fuel rushes to the back, and the float, being the shape it is, it drops. It allows more fuel in there.
It gets worse.
And you don't want fuel.
No, sure,
So then, you come up, you get to the top of the wheel stand, then it comes right back down again.
Yeah,
and then it takes off, and that's not a nice feeling. Anyway.
No, for sure.
So this is your power system for the primaries right here. So to get that out, just flip it a couple times, it'll pop out of there. These are much the same as the secondary metering rods. These are the primary metering rods. And there's a piston here that's activated by vacuum. High vacuum pulls this down into the jet. The big part of the rod goes in the jet, leans it out. As soon as you step on it, the vacuum drops. There's a spring in here that allows it to pop up, and then it goes into the small section of the jet, and then you get a richer mixture. So that's pretty much
your power valve.
That's your power valve.
Yeah,
they don't blow out. Okay.
Like Ollie does.
Yeah, you're not going to be buying $20 power valves.
Yeah,
okay.
No kidding, yeah.
Yes. Now
you can adjust them, Bill, with the metering rods to
you
make
can
them richer.
you can
later,
you can put all
sooner or later.
You can put all different metering rods.
Different vacuum levels, right?
Yes, the spring controls that.
Okay.
So there's basically, I think GM had like 5 of these springs, anywhere from 5 to 10 inches of where it would open. For a high performance application, you want it open fairly quickly. It may not be the best for fuel mileage, but it'll sure help throttle response a lot. So that spring, an old trick used to be we used to take the stock spring and do that to it.
Yeah, okay.
And make it longer.
Can't do that to a Holly.
No, you can't do that to a Holly either. You can try, but it's not going to work very good.
No.
Here's your float system here. You have fuel goes in here. It comes up past the needle and seat. As soon as the fuel level comes up, the float comes up like this and closes the needle and seat, which is right here. There's the needle and seat right there. Okay, the float is a shape like that. There's 2 or 3 different floats. There's also what they call a short fulcrum and a long fulcrum here. And basically the short fulcrum isn't as good. It won't put as much pressure on the needle and seat. You want a fulcrum like this.
Is there different size needle and seats too for high performance, just to get more flow, whatever?
As far as I know, there's probably about 3 or 4 different sizes you can get.
Okay.
The trick is you can take, I think anything between 125 thou and 135 thou is good for most vehicles. I've tried using the 149 needle and seat that Edelbrock made, and it just allows too much fuel too fast into the fuel bowl, like it does some strange things. So what I do, I have some number drills. I will drill a stock needle and seat out to 135 is about as big as I want to go, and then I take a check ball, a small check ball actually out of the accelerator pump, and I'll put down in the needle and seat, and then I'll take a small punch, tap it, and make a new seat, and and away you go.
Yeah, pretty cool.
You don't have to buy a new needle and seat at all, right? These are your jets down here. They're numbered. So that's your primary jets right there.
So typically, though, when you're tuning it, you leave the jets and just change the rods?
Just change.
Do that and leave the jets, or do you change? How often do you change jets also?
You basically, so if you're running, like say you're running a 72 main jet, which is quite typical for a smaller Venturi, like a 750 one. you want the metering rod, the big part of the metering rod to be about 30 thou smaller than what the jet is.
Okay.
So a 72 jet and a 41 metering rod, perfect.
Okay. You mentioned 750. So how many sizes of Quadrajets
Two.
are there, Bill?
There's
Just seven?
two. There are two.
Okay.
And
What are they? What sizes are they?
A 750 and an 800. The
Oh,
difference
that's all. Okay.
the difference is in the primaries. And
Oh, okay.
if you look down, I broke that. If you look down in here, okay, really close, and if you put a drill bit around the outer ring, the one you can get probably like a 5/32 drill bit will fit in there. The 800s, you can put a bigger one in there.
That's the limitation of flow, right? Is
Yes.
the size of your venturi,
It's
right?
just the
Yeah.
size of the primary venturi.
Yeah, okay.
So you can basically you can physically see the difference if you hold both of them up. There's nothing wrong with the 750s by any means. That'll make
Most of them are 750. aren't
yes, they are.
Yes.
A
I've
lot
seen
of
a few
a lot of the emission ones in the mid 70s to early 80s, they were all larger venturi.
Okay. They were okay.
Yeah, and I don't know why they did that. My Oldsmobile engine has the large venturi in it,
Yeah.
you know, and I know between the 750 and between this 750 race one and the 800 that's on the car, there's 400 or 500 difference
Okay.
in the 330 foot. So we also have some. If you have a Quadrajet that won't idle very well, these tubes right here go down into the main well. So there's fuel on those tubes. There's a little restriction. It looks just like this. So these tubes here are like these tubes down inside. These tubes here are your air bleeds for the secondaries. So they introduce air into the fuel that's coming out of here. These do the same for the idle circuit. So they pull fuel up, they mix it with air, and it goes back down these holes. These holes control how much gets to the mixture screw. So if you have one that won't idle, you have to open up the bottom of these to about 36 thou, and open the down holes to the mixture screws to about maybe 52 or 53. That'll make the thing idle.
So you're changing the airflow rather than the fuel flow, really.
Well, you're actually pulling more fuel out of here.
Okay, because you made that.
Because you haven't really changed the airflow, because that's your vents right there for the idle.
Yeah, okay.
These right here.
Yeah.
Now they should be 70 thou. These are a large air bleed. They sort of want the 70 thou in there. But anyway, you can make a Quadrajet idle. It's not terribly hard to do that, you know. You have your main air bleed is right here. That's the main air bleed for the venturi. So you have this hole, you have fuel coming up, and it's mixing with air here, and then out the venturi it goes. And that is a triple booster, they call it. It meters the fuel very well.
Okay. Oh yeah,
You see the
two or three
boosters?
different
Yeah.
diameters there,
Yep,
right? Yeah.
yep.
Okay,
And
sure.
it'll pull
Yeah.
fuel very easily.
Yeah.
It's restrictive, but it atomizes the fuel very, very good. Now the next thing is, there's a lot more. So there's your secondary throttles open right there. They used to say in all the books that you wanted the throttle open to about that point right there, so it was even with this plate. You see the angle that's on. But I found anything I've ever had on the dyno wants to be straight up and down.
It does, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wants to be
That's the most flow capable, right?
yes. And I mean that's a lot of flow when you look at it. Right?
Yeah.
That's a big
You
hole.
fall in there.
You could fall in there. Small children.
Yeah.
Anyway, now there was something else I was going to say, that the air door opening, it's adjustable. So when the air door opens, there's a stop right here, right there where it hits. And on my race carburetor, I make this adjustable. But there's a measurement from here, from this edge here to here, and typically 1.350 to 1.370.
Okay, you got that.
They will be 1.250 from the factory. Okay. And Mercruiser did a tricky thing back on their boats. They had a Mercruiser that was 20 horsepower more.
Because of the Quadrajet carburetor?
And it was the secondary air door opening.
Is that right?
And they charged you more money for that engine.
It's our optional version.
All they did was open the secondaries. Isn't that sneaky?
Good for them.
Yeah, good for them.
Good marketing.
It is
I
good.
love marketing, right?
Good. Yeah, there you go. So
they have no conscience.
They have no conscience. You can't get this open
they just want to make
too
money.
awful far. You know, it'll start cutting off the boosters when you get these too close.
Sure. Yeah.
That's when you have to shorten the tube a little bit.
Yeah, you would think it wouldn't even work there. You would think you'd want to have it, right out of the way, wouldn't you? Right?
You have the plate there. A lot of fuel hits here.
It would.
Now what I've done, I've dimpled the back plates on these.
Okay.
So that the fuel hitting
Does that help break it up too? Does that help?
I figure it does. Whether it does or not, I really never did a back-to-back test, but I don't think it hurts.
You would think it would, eh?
I don't think, because that's the fuel's hitting that and just splattering.
And you got velocity going through there at the same time. It's going to spray out, right?
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Cool.
So anyway, that's kind of, now there's one more thing, the idle system. So this one, does this one have it? Okay, so people drill these throttle plates out to make them idle. Oh, that's not really needed. These holes right here, there's a hole here and a hole right here, and they go right into there, and there.
Oh, okay.
So they actually draw air past the throttle plates. So to make them idle with the big cam, you need to drill these out larger instead of drilling holes in here.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So you drill them out to 110 or like 93 to 110 or something. So there's no need to drill the holes out in the throttle plate on a Quadrajet as long as they have these. And idle air bypass.
That's your adjustments for it, right?
These are the mixture screws right here. Yes.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yes. And you can open up these holes for the mixture screws. This carburetor, the mixture screw holes are very small, I just noticed. So you'd probably want to open those up, probably to about 80 thou, because that's going to be a restriction there. Most of the late model ones are big enough holes there anyway. But anyhow, so that's kind of the basics of a Quadrajet, I guess. And the choke system is a whole other thing. That'll have to be for maybe another day.
Okay. Okay.
So.
Well, I don't want to stop you if you're on the roll. Or keep going.
There's a dash pot on these carburetors. Okay. And this dash pot acts as a choke pull-off, but it also slows up the opening of the secondaries. Okay. So vacuum closes this. When you step on it, there's an orifice in the dash pot that actually allows the vacuum to release slowly. It just gives it time for the air door to open, so it doesn't whack open and then bounce shut again. Okay.
You don't get a stumble, especially if you're on choke circuit too.
Exactly.
Right? So,
Exactly. Yeah. Now, just so on my race Quadrajet here, there are some modifications inside, but I'm not going to take this.
Now, is that off your car?
This is my spare carburetor.
Okay.
Okay. So this one's 500 slower than the carburetor that's on there now. But the trick to it is the 1-to-1 linkage.
Okay.
So it's like a double pumper, okay? So as soon as the primaries open up, the secondaries open up instantly.
Now, is your air doors opening at the same time?
Yep, it'll open the same time.
The air door's opening too.
As soon as you give it a shot, the air door will open.
Okay. How would that work on the street?
It would work really good. Fuel mileage might not be so good. It might follow up.
You can take the gulp though. You can take a drink like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
It might follow your spark plugs if you're just idling around, because that's a lot.
Because you're going to get
bunch of fuel. You're going to be pulling fuel out these boosters all the time.
Right.
But the throttle response would be awesome.
You're not really worried about fuel mileage anyway, right? So.
Now I guess if a guy wanted to do a half and half, he could modify. I've taken this arm right here,
Okay.
and I've modified this to work. Okay. And it takes a little bit of screwing around. You know, I drilled a couple holes in here, and then all the spring mechanism is gone off of this. So the secondaries, if the choke's on a Quadrajet, there's a lockout that stops the secondaries from opening. There's a spring loaded deal here. I take all that off of there, and then when I get it where I want to, I'll drill it and pin it.
Does NHRA care about, as long as it's a Quadrajet, you can do whatever you want?
Yep.
Is that the idea?
And we have to maintain
Obviously.
the choke. The choke has
to have a choke plate.
the choke plate has to stay in there.
Okay.
It doesn't say how long the choke plate has to be though.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Oh, okay. You better hope NHRA is watching this video.
You see this
yeah,
compared to
that?
that?
Yeah, no, it's cool.
They just say choke plate.
Okay.
It's still a choke plate.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You know, no, and I don't use this dash pot. I have it blocked off.
Okay.
I don't need it for my trans brake stuff.
Right.
But anyway, then these tubes, you know, I showed you in this one. I don't use these tubes, and these wells here for these tubes. I drill the holes out to 1/8 of an inch to allow more fuel volume.
Okay.
Okay, just so that fuel can come out of them. You know, on my race Quadrajet, it's a later model one, so it uses it's cut out different here, and there's a round, kind of a filler piece they put in there, a plastic filler piece. I don't have one here. Anyway, they use that round piece right there. The cars that went to California in high altitude, they had an aneroid jet in there.
Oh, okay.
Or actually an aneroid jet and a metering rod, depending on the air pressure.
Compensate for it.
It would compensate for air pressure and richen it up or lean it out, right?
Sure.
But any cars around here just use a plastic filler. I take that filler out, and that also allows for more fuel volume in there. You need fuel volume in the Quadrajet. You know, I am pretty sure that wide open throttle on a 600 horse engine, there probably isn't a 1/4 inch of fuel in the bottom of that fuel bowl.
No, it's basically running from the pump
right directly into the
right
engine.
into the engine. Basically, it's not even stopping to take a look. Right?
I think that float is right down.
You're just flowing right through it. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Flow through
But
system.
anyway, they work well. So,
Bill, you are a wizard. We're lucky to have you. I'm gonna have to watch the video a few times just to understand everything you're telling us. One thing I did say at the beginning, you know, the Holleys are simple to look at. It's pretty obvious how they work. These are not. They're a lot more complicated. They may work as well, but they're not simple.
They're a little more complicated, but they're also, you don't have to spend a fortune on them once you have them set. If you have an upper gasket and maybe a spare needle and seat, what else is there to go wrong?
Yeah, for sure. No, it's
dollar
for dollar.
You aren't stripping fuel bowl screws. You're not having to change gaskets, and to change the jets, you can leave the primaries alone. Only do the secondaries. You can do that in 3 minutes.
So before you go throw your Quadrajet away and put a Holley on, watch this video and look at. We'll make a follow-up on Bill actually building one from scratch in the next video. When you get a chance. We've used up lots of your time today. I learned a lot, and certainly I'm sure everybody else, experience is expensive, and knowledge is power, right? And that's the knowledge that, seeing one cutaway, I didn't know you had the cutaway version. That's pretty cool.
It shows it a little bit easier, doesn't it?
I always have this thought, what about the guys that designed this from scratch?
They were pretty smart guys. And
understanding them is one thing. Designing them from
the thing is, there's probably 100 different metering rods, and there's 30 different hangers. And how did they design that in the factory without dyno testing?
Yeah,
they had some kind of program that they could do that. I'd love to get a hold of that program.
Kind of flow testing or something.
I don't know how they did it.
Yeah, no, I don't know. for sure. But you know, the other thing is, that's the way the Holly comes on an OEM car. You can just drive it. They work pretty good, right?
Yes.
You don't have to do
No.
Bill's drag racing, so he needs obviously.
I have to use this carburetor.
Sure, but if you just have one on your car, don't throw it away. Spend
No,
lots of money
you can modify it. You know, it's like for me to do a street carburetor, it's going to be around the $500 mark.
Okay.
And it's getting harder and harder to get metering rods and stuff, and they're getting expensive. It all depends what the metering rods come in the carburetor. You need a carburetor kit, a float, a choke pull off, and then all the modifications that go with it, right?
I think one thing that probably influenced a lot of that thinking, if you look at Chevrolet anyway, I'll use them as an example. The medium or lower power engines always came with a cast iron manifold and a Quardrajet. The high performance version came with a Holly and aluminum intake manifold. So you assume you can't make power unless you have that, right? So the 427, the L88 had an aluminum manifold, a Holly carburetor. The 390 horse version had a Quardrajet carburetor, right? So that's the logical thinking. And I'll give you my own experience. In 1968, I had a 67 Camaro 327, 275 horsepower, 4-speed car, and it had a Quardrajet. So I found aluminum, I don't know, traded it or whatever, manifold, and Holly carburetor. I thought it was going to just be a big difference, and it never wasn't any faster at all. It wasted a lot of money and time and didn't do anything, just for me anyway. So don't make that mistake. You got a Quardrajet and you can work with it for a lot less money than buying a new Holly. And if you need to get one built by an expert, we know where you can get that done too.
Yes, sir.
You'll have to line up though. I'm pretty sure there's a pretty good waiting list.
There is.
Please like and go ahead, Bill. Sorry.
I'm sorry. There's one more thing. Here's a NHRA legal Superstock head off of 350. Have a look at those ports.
Oh yeah. No, that's I'm looking at. I'm trying to see. That's a Chevrolet head.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a 441 cylinder head. It's
441.
A smog head.
Yeah.
Not so the ports have been changed. The volume is still the same.
The shape is different. That's
shape
for
is
sure.
different.
Yeah, for sure.
I had to fix these. 190.
You blocked off. Was that a gasket there? Or
Yep.
You blocked it off?
Nope. You use the thick gasket because the trick is to decrease the cylinder or the intake volume. We machine the intake rail right. We can machine it right to the valve cover bolt hole.
Oh, geez. Okay.
And that takes a lot of CCs out. We can open the port up other places,
right,
and then machine it off of here to kind of fool them.
Well, actually, the head those 292 heads, whoever ported them before, and actually Mark noticed that at Atchison's, they ported so much that this hole
broken right through.
Broke right through. Yeah,
You got to be careful there.
I sealed it when I put it together, but
yeah.
But if he hadn't told me that, I probably wouldn't have noticed it. It'd be pulling oil in there, right? So
exhaust ports are raised. Exhaust ports are raised up.
Pretty cool stuff.
So that head would make almost 590 horse.
Well, what head's that off of now?
That's a 69 Chev 350. It would have been.
Superstock car.
Superstock. It's off of Superstock. Yeah, 194, 150 valve. I had to fix these.
Those are like 76 cc heads too. Right?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Big ugly chamber.
Yeah, sure.
They mill these out so much. There's only about a 30 thou wall here and here. Yeah. And I had to grind out the head-along crack. I had to grind it out and make the crack big and fill it all in with epoxy.
Oh, geez.
So I'm doing that for a friend of mine.
Fortunately, it's on the intake side, right?
Yes, you got to make sure it's not going to water. I use or leak water. I use steel wool and epoxy. I pack it right down in there.
Okay, good.
So anyway, that's my story.
We can listen to you all day, Bill, but
I got an engine to go to the dyno.
You got an engine to go into the dyno. You know, we might even get there with you. We'll see how it goes. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and if you're paying attention, you can learn lots. Thank you for watching Gold's Garage.
Thanks, guys.